Hey there, you fucking losers, and welcome back to another Blender tutorial where in this one we're going to be doing this kind of silhouette of text impression. I saw it as I was walking and I thought, wow, that looks very rustic, that looks very cool. And in case I'm not explaining myself very well, it's not text, but it's kind of the silhouette or the impression that text is there. It's kind of this cool effect whereby the absence of the thing you're showing, you show the thing. Either way, I'm going to show you how to make this thing procedurally and it looks cool. So let's make it super quickly. Here's the node group I made. So you can see I typed in 808. You could type in anything. It could be ABC, 123, do, re, mi, fuck you, please, whatever. And we're going to be able to control not only the kind of direction that this drop shadow or silhouette is showing from, but the distance and also the color. And I find that black actually kind of looks the coolest. But geometry nodes, shader nodes, type anything and it will work. So let me show you how I made it. Okay, cube, geometry nodes, use it. This is all going to be procedural, like I said. You know when you're making a tutorial that feels like it should be 3 minutes, but you feel like you can't talk fast enough? Whatever. Cube, geometry nodes, get rid of the group input, and we first need to make text so that we can make the absence of text. It's like to create darkness, we need light first. I don't know if that makes sense. Either way, for that, I'm going to use a string to curve node. What it does is it takes a string, a piece of text, some numbers, whatever, and makes it into a curve object. To give myself full control, I'm going to use a string node, and you can see I type in ABC, and there it is. And by the way, at this point, we can pick a font, the size of it, whatever. I like impact and whatever. Take that. We need it to now be a mesh, because if you take this and render it, it's kind of invisible, right? It's just kind of the curve, the impression of text. To give it thickness, in some sense, go to fill curve. That's going to fill the curve. Wow. And now all we need to do is, since we have this thing, we need to somehow create the absence of it. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to make a second copy of this underneath. That's the one that we're actually going to see. And this top one is almost going to be this kind of glass, but weirder than glass occluding layer. So what am I saying? I'm saying we need a copy of this. I'm going to transform it. And I'm going to join these together. So I've literally just taken this, bifurcated it. Fancy word. I've made a copy of it that we can transform. And then I'm just going to join it afterwards. So you can see now we have two copies, but from the top view, it just kind of looks like, I'm moving it. We need to make two materials to make this look good, so I'm going to set material here. I'm going to set material there. And what are the materials going to be? Well, this is actually kind of the key insight in this tutorial, so pay attention if you weren't already. You brain dead fuck. The key takeaway is one of these materials. Material 1 is just going to be the color, so I'm just going to use an RGB, or you could do anything for this. It could be a BSDF, but I'm just going to use an RGB for the bottom layer. And then for the top layer, which is meant to be invisible, it's kind of weird because right now, like we could set it to be this kind of grayish and, apply this material and hope it kind of blends in. But it doesn't like really, right? Because if I change the color of this background, we need a way to solve this. Here's how you do it. For the second material, what you're going to do is you're going to use something called a holdout shader. Holdout, it basically means it's specifically for this. If we get rid of the background now, you can see it's done exactly what we want. What holdout is it's not transparency. We're not making the top layer transparent, otherwise we'd see through it, but we're saying hold it out. We're saying it's not like we're picking you last from gym class. You're not even attending gym class. We're getting rid of those pixels. So you can see it's kind of like this window. When we look into this window, it just deletes those pixels, says make it alpha 0. Okay. So you can see now at this point, material 1, which is, for this bottom thing, is going to control kind of the look of this. And we can control the position of this. So what's the big deal? End of tutorial. Well, the big deal is the way we have this set up right now is we kind of have to pick these X and Y coordinates ourselves and just kind of hope that it looks right and the shifting. I want to do it mathematically so I could just pick some numbers and it looks great. So instead of X and Y selection, I want to have kind of like drop shadow settings, distance away and rotation. We're going to do that with math. So for this transform, again, this is going to be, this node is the set of instructions that moves the second one underneath. that is what we want to outsource to Mathland. Send it to India. We're going to do that with the combine XYZ. So with the combine XYZ, first make the z bit negative so it's underneath it, of course. And then for the x and y is where we do a bit of math. If you haven't taken trigonometry, that is not my problem, that is yours. But I'll explain it anyways. We're going to need a sine and a cosine. These are trigonometric functions that tell us the x and y location on the unit circle. In other words, rotation. That's what it's good for. And we're going to use that for this kind of rotation thing. So we take a number, we take the sines and the cosines, plug one in, plug the other in. The order doesn't really matter. I mean, they're kind of like opposites of each other in some sense. And you're going to see, let me disable this. You're going to see now this thing is rotating around it. Doesn't matter where we put it, but it's gonna be orbiting. Although I guess it's orbiting around the middle. So there is an argument, I guess, to center it. Although, no, they move together. So it's relative to each other. You can see this thing's orbiting around it because of the sines and the cosines. So we have one part of it, but the second part isn't there, the distance away. And you can see the distance is kind of too big, so we need to close that in. In other words, these sines and cosines, I wish they gave us the rotation thing, but they were a bit smaller. So what you could do, if you were a dummy, you could take this and multiply them both by like 0.5 or some number. Now it's kind of drifting closer and the holdout's working. But that's a lot of nodes. Let's do it simply. We already combined x, y, z. Let's take vector math. Combine x, y, z with multiplication because I want to scale only the x and y. So you can see now we're getting a distance function. And you could do that with combine x, y, z. Although now that I'm thinking about it, this is actually more nodes. So maybe multiplication was the way to go. I'm scaling the sine and the cosine by what? By the same number. So let's make that like 0.1, 10%. And now we have rotation and distance. So let's put everything we've done, our knowledge, into the thing. Let's make a cool kind of street address thing. So let's say it's like 237 Main Street. We have that piece of text. In my experience, again, black looks the coolest, and we kind of need to pick an angle and a distance that makes this look good and makes it readable. So I'm going to pick an angle, something like that. I find that a very close distance makes it the most readable, something like that. And then, finally, we can use the font to our advantage. I don't know if we could do better. Oh, that looks fucking dope. I was about to say I don't know if we could do better than the Impact font, but this one looks pretty dope. Okay, 231 Main Street. And maybe Main Street is kind of like a darkish blue. And there you go. You take it, you render it, you slap it on top of something. Now, one thing to note is this is dependent on the view because I'm putting one thing under the other. There are ways to do it without it, but I would recommend you just take it. You take your camera, if it wasn't already, position it just up top so you can render this as an image, and then you do all your motion graphics, VFX, whatever. And technically, I should just mention this before I wrap up. I know I'm taking forever. Technically, you want this to be an orthographic camera so that we don't have any perspective, so it literally looks like one's on top of the other without any, like, you know, 2-eye perspective stuff. Either way, you get the idea. I've overstayed my welcome. Hopefully, you learned something. And let's see, how long have I been going? 8 minutes. Disgusting. Hopefully you learned something in this tutorial. This is the part where I tell you about Patreon and why you should join it. There's 720, 30, 40, I don't know, it keeps changing. People, are they all wrong? No, they're right. And the people who aren't in Patreon are wrong. Let me tell you why. So, patrons get access to 3 things that the commoner YouTube viewers like you, I appreciate you, but that's what you are, do not get access to. 1, early access to tutorials. They saw this tutorial before you. They knew this before you. They are better than you. But you could fix that by clicking the link in the description. 2, they get blend files. So for example, this, which isn't a big one in this case, they could just download it and they don't need to make it themselves, fully customizable, all this. But the important thing is because I've had Patreon for like 3 years, I've uploaded hundreds. Probably 300, 400 blend files and resources that you can download, like that. Some of those are huge, some of those are small, but it's definitely way more than you should be getting for $5 a month. Or free, especially if you only do 1 month and then you download everything. And then the third thing they get access to is exclusive tutorials that you cannot even see. I usually do one a month. This month I did a custom points in volume node, not points on the distribute points on Surface, but not the Surface, the volume. Because I saw Arendelle did it, so I'm like, oh, I want to come up with a version, and then I did. So now we can distribute points and volumes. Those tend to be more technical tutorials. Sometimes I do a tutorial series and stuff like that. But yeah, Patreon, it exists, link in the description. I appreciate anybody who does that. It helps fund this channel and the CG Matter channel directly. There's no better way to support all of this streamlined. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.